Welcome to A Life Without Parole. I'm Amy, and today we're going to be talking about Ruby Franke and Kevin Franke from 8 Passengers. For those of you who do not know who Ruby Franke is, I'll give you a little recap. I've done a couple of YouTube videos, so you can click on the video right here if you'd like to see some of the coverage that I've had on the Ruby Franke case. The reason that Kevin Franke is in the news this week, he gave a statement to lawmakers regarding child welfare. And we're going to discuss what that entailed today. So let's get started. The Ruby Kevin Franke saga has been going for a while. And at one point, I was really questioning who was at fault for the things that happened to the Ruby and Kevin Franke children. And I was aware that their oldest daughter was trying to turn them in for neglect and for other issues. And so DCSF was notified. They've been involved in this case for a while, but nothing seemed to be done when it came down to it. And that's what I want to talk about today. I had a I had my questions before their trials happened of who was to blame. Was it Ruby? Was it Kevin? Or was it their therapist, Jodihildebrandt? Or was it all three? And now Kevin Franke has admitted that he had fault in this. He has not been accused of any crimes that he's currently in jail for, but his wife Ruby is in jail. And I should say ex-wife. He filed for divorce. I'm not sure if it's final yet, but he is divorcing Ruby, his wife. Jody and Ruby are both in jail. They're both in prison. And every few years, their parole will come up and we'll discuss it more to see how long they will be in prison for what they did to the children in St. George, Utah, in Ivins, Utah. Kevin Franke testified during a closed door session, and there were many reporters outside the closed door room, and he was able to answer quite a few questions, and he brought up quite a few questions that I've had over the years that I'm curious about, and I'd love to hear your opinion about too. And this has to do with child welfare reform. Now, I don't know about you, but I personally feel like the child welfare system in the state of Utah and in many states, in fact, in the United States as a whole, needs reform for sure. And that's what Kevin is advocating for. And I want to dive in. I want to do a deep dive into what that means and what it looks like. Because the things that need some fixing is a conversation that we all need to be having. In fact, around the world, no matter where you live, I hope that child welfare can be a topic of discussion and something that we will all work together to help create a better place in this world for children.
I have some strong opinions. I'm a proponent for child welfare reform, and I want to see some serious changes. Or so much of the current policy and procedure is hidden. Right now, we're out in the hallway because there's a closed door session going on. I think so many of us have questions about how this process works, what failed, what went wrong. But when all of those things are discussed behind closed doors, how can anyone know what needs to be changed? So it really doesn't foster confidence in the system.
One thing that Kevin brought up in the hallway, because he couldn't talk about it in the closed door session, was that there's so much about child welfare reform that is hidden and closed to the public. And even what the laws are, it's so hard to know what they are and what happens. because in anyone who is under the age of 18, there is an a sense of we need to keep things private for their behalf. And I agree, and he agrees. But the reform, the laws that have to do with what needs to be reformed, he suggests needs to be open to everyone so that everyone together can help to create ideas and thoughts and ways to help reform child welfare wherever there are issues. And there are many issues, but these meetings are held, behind closed doors. Why is the public not able to be a part of it so that we know what issues there are and we can help try to come up with ideas to help transform the way that the systems are set up?
I don't disagree with privacy laws, but I think we need to look at them from a higher elevation and really ask the question, can we address some of these issues and some of these questions without invading individual privacy? I personally have the opinion that privacy laws are used by agencies to shield and protect themselves.
When it comes to child welfare, it's really kind of confusing to even know how the system works. I'm going to tell a story in a minute about a situation that I once witnessed, and I personally didn't know what the laws were, what could be done. Have you ever had a situation where you see something and you hear something and you know it's icky and you don't? I know that's a real professional word, but it's the best word to describe it. But you don't know what, if anything, you can do. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But first, let me outline why I'm even going to be talking about that. Do the privacy laws that are in effect around the world that are set up to protect children sometimes protect someone other than the child? We're going to dive in. Let's talk about caseworkers. There's no doubt about it. There are not enough caseworkers there to handle all the calls that come in and all the situations that arise. In fact, there's really not enough money to get enough caseworkers to really be able to protect children. That is something that is not disputed. The question is, what do we do about that?
In general, the process of working with the caseworkers that have been assigned to that have been assigned to our case has been overall a positive experience, I think, for me and for my children. The caseworkers that have been assigned to our case, I think, genuinely care. They are genuinely trying to help my family, and but they have to operate within the current system and the laws and policies that govern that system. I read an article today, I think, in KUTV News of an interview of a former caseworker who wished to remain anonymous, who reported that in a single day, he or she received 5 new reports that needed to be responded to within 24 hours. That's amazing. That's overwhelming for anybody. And the caseworkers that I have interacted with have expressed similar feelings and a feeling of being overwhelmed.
Each case could take a day or 2 or 3 or a week or 2 weeks. And yet each caseworker has to decide which one's the most important, and they just can't do them all. They just can't. According to Kevin, the caseworkers involved with the situation with his children, he feels like they were not the problem here. The caseworkers are not the problem. Their problem is they have too many cases to be able to handle them. And the laws that protect everyone involved make it so their hands are tied a lot of the time. So, what do we do as a society to get more money and more resources to help with child welfare? What do we need to do? And are there laws that are set up right now that actually protect bureaucratic people and not the children themselves? Let's talk about the Gavin Peterson case in Utah. There were many caseworkers involved, and there were alerts, and there were things that were happening, and yet he still fell through the cracks. It's horrific. And that family withheld food from him until he was unalive because the caseworkers couldn't protect him. And after that happened, there was an investigation done to see if any laws or policies or anything needed to change to protect a future child in the same situation. And the report came back as no, nothing could be done, nothing needs to be changed. What?
I wouldn't be advocating for red flag laws if I didn't think they would have made a difference in the case of my own children and family, and in the case of Gavin Peterson and his family.
Kevin Franke talked about how there were 3 children who were unalive. There was no DCFS involvement in those cases. And he asked the question, why? Why? Now, you can't just predict what everyone's going to do, but there are a lot of times when there are what we call red flags. But red flags don't necessarily translate into being able to do anything about it. Again, I'm going to tell a red flag story in just a minute and help to explain it so you understand it in a more concrete way.
Honestly, I felt quite angry and pretty emotional. I know that what was presented was very factual. In my opinion, I think one is too many. And I know it was cited that of the 4 homicides in this last fiscal year, it was cited that 3 of them did not have DCFS involvement. I would counter and say that's exactly my point. Why wasn't DCFS involved?
Kevin Franke's children were reported by multiple sources, whether that was the oldest sibling who was in college who reported that they were left alone for extended periods of time, days, nights, without food, without anything. And neighbors reported, ecclesiastical people reported, people that knew them from church reported. And yet, when the police went to their door, they would knock on the door. They could look through the window and see children in there, but they didn't answer. They were told not to answer. So they walk away, and that case goes to nowhere because the laws don't allow them to do anything else. What? There's a report that a child is left alone without food. You can see the child's in the home. You don't see any adults answering, but you can't do anything about it. And the report goes nowhere. Well, in the circular file cabinet.
I have more questions today than I've ever had. I know that a report was released that had a timeline of all of the DCFS interaction with the Gavin Peterson case. And when I read that a report was dismissed because it was unfounded or unsubstantiated or unconfirmed, I have a lot of questions of what does that mean? Why was it unconfirmed? Why was it unsubstantiated? What justified that characterization?
Why was Kevin Franke's adult daughter not taken seriously? Why weren't the neighbors? Why were these people? And this is what Kevin is calling red flags. is there any way that we can create what he calls a red flag law? Basically, when there are red flags, something just isn't right, and we just feel like it should be investigated. Isn't there a way to keep children safe? Shouldn't that be our number one priority? The other question is, should the public be brought in and the laws, the child welfare laws, become more transparent so we know what they are and what they aren't?
Well, first, I would recommend to the legislature that they bring the public into this discussion. So much of this discussion is going on behind closed doors, and I think that needs to stop.
Kevin suggests that maybe judges have too much power, and the people who are on the ground seeing what's happening, that are one person away from that child instead of layers and layers away, should have more of what they're saying, what they see, what they hear, what they witness, should weigh more on what happens with red flag laws than what a judge can just go, no thanks, no, no, no. Maybe. Comment below and let me know what you think.
I think there needs to be transparency in dissecting the entire child welfare system. Second, I think a major issue that we don't talk a lot about, but I think we need to, is how much power the judges in the juvenile court have over this entire process. They literally are the drivers and the decision makers for the go or no go in most of these cases. And that really needs to be examined closer, I think. Do they really know what's going on? They're 3 steps removed from the child as opposed to individuals like teachers, neighbors, friends, ecclesiastical leaders who are only 1 step removed from the child. And those individuals know best when something is wrong.
If you were to talk to a caseworker, I'm sure that there are many caseworkers that have gone on the record and say, the system's broken. Child welfare system is broken.
I would encourage the legislature to speak with the individuals who are boots on the ground in this. Not the director, not the administrators. Speak with the caseworker.
Now, I personally have been pretty hard on Kevin Franke over the course of this case. I have questioned, where was he? Why didn't he protect his children? Why didn't he step in? And I will say that he is openly admitting that he was manipulated. He also is saying we don't know the whole story. I would love to know what the whole story is. I mean, their life was out in public by their own doing from the 8 Passengers YouTube channel. So, yes, there's lots of millions of people who have opinions because we watched what was happening. But according to him, he also was manipulated by Jodihildebrandt and his wife. And he now regrets that he didn't step in. So I'm feeling some compassion for him. And I can see that he is trying. He is trying to do right by them now. I would love to talk to him and ask some of the hard questions, and also to ask what could have helped in this situation so that it doesn't happen again to someone else.
All of the details regarding what happened with my family and in my experience aren't out. And the narrative that is quite popular in the media and on social media today has many inaccuracies. And when the time is right and when I'm ready to speak, I will, and my adult children will tell what really happened. But the bottom line is many of us were deceived and betrayed. And that led to the disaster and the tragedy that impacted my children. I'm not claiming to be guiltless in this, and there are a lot of things that I wish that I would have done different. And I chose to believe a professionally licensed mental health counselor and my wife in many instances, and I should have questioned that.
No doubt about it. He was deceived by his therapist, Jodihildebrandt, and so was his wife. And so were many, many people. Why is she allowed to have her license when all these allegations are out there? I mean, she doesn't have it now. She's in prison. But why did she have it for so long? What happened to the laws protecting those people from therapists who are? Could red flag laws have saved Gavin Peterson? Possibly. A year before he was unalive, there was a school lunch worker who reported that this young man was suffering, and it went nowhere.
It's telling to me that a former caseworker came forward to the media and called the system broken, but wants to remain anonymous. Why? Why? Well, obviously, that individual fears retribution. That's not right. I find it telling that Gavin Peterson's death was reported less than 2 weeks after I made my last comments to the Legislative Committee regarding red flag laws. The timing of that was awful, but I hope that it causes these committee members to listen to the suggestions I'm providing.
Now I'm going to tell you the story that I referred to earlier. I was working in a school district in the state of Nebraska. I'm not going to give a lot of details, but let me give you a little nutshell of what I witnessed. There was a mother who had some young boys, and when she would bring them to school, there were things that I witnessed that gave me that unsettling feeling. Like when they would get to school, she would try to get her son out of the car, and he didn't want to go to school. So she would physically like throw him out, and he'd be running after the car, grabbing onto the car as she drove away. I mean, it was insane. And I just remember thinking, that isn't safe. Why is she allowed to drive away? I mean, there were just some weird things. Another thing was she, I overheard her talking and joking about how she doesn't really like being a parent. And so she wanted her kids on medication to mellow them out so she wouldn't have to parent, basically. When she had a toddler, and she had this toddler, and she talked about how she gave the toddler Tic Tacs to teach him how to swallow pills so that he would be prepared to take medication to mellow him out when she didn't want to parent anymore. Icky, right? Not illegal, not that I could see. I didn't know. Like, what's the child welfare laws about that? Anyway, let's fast forward. I was in the school, and this woman's son, who was in fourth grade, got upset at a teacher and kicked the teacher in the stomach. And she was pregnant, kicked her really hard in the stomach. It was atrocious. Behavior, I mean, you just can't even imagine the behavior from this child. Now, again, think about the mother. Anyway, so he was taken by an aide to the principal's office, and I happened to be in like the big reception area. There were many people in that room when he was being brought in for kicking the teacher. And as he was being brought in, he would pass this reception area and get to the principal's office. And there were a couple of parents signing in their children, and some teachers, and there were probably 10 people in the room. As the boy was going to the principal's office, he didn't want to go to the principal's office, and there was a cup of pencils. He grabbed a pencil as he was going by and tried to stab the teacher or the principal with a pencil. So many of the staff, we had all been trained with, I think it's called MANT training, MADT, but basically it's how to diffuse situations and be able to restrain someone who is harm to themselves or harm to another without harming them, right? So a couple of the teachers helped restrain him and get the pencil from him and so on. And that's as much as I saw. Then after that, well, then later on, I was in a meeting with a lot of attorneys about this child and what's going to happen next. And I mean a lot of attorneys. There was an attorney for the boy, there was an attorney for the boy's mother, there was an attorney for the boy's father. The parents were divorced and both in this horrible fighting all the time. So they each had their own attorney. There was an attorney for the school, an attorney for the principal, an attorney for the, there were 6 attorneys. I don't know. And then administrators and some of the witnesses in this room. And basically, it was determined that this 4th grader was going to be sent to Boys Town in Omaha to live there and be reformed, so to speak. And the whole time, I remember thinking, what about the parents? Nothing happened to the parents. I mean, all of this happened in the school and whatnot, but, and what about, I don't know, what could have happened differently? Is there any laws? Were there any red flag laws that could have happened before this happened? Now, that child is an adult now. This happened years ago. And whatever happened to him, I don't know. I moved away. I don't know what happened to him, but I've never forgot that whole situation. And I just keep on thinking, what can be done? And I feel like as a collaborative effort, there's got to be something that can be more. Do we need parenting classes? Do we need, when you have something that seems icky but it's not illegal, is there a way to just say, we don't know for sure, but maybe an investigation would be good? But really, think about those caseworkers. They've got 5 hardcore cases per day. There's not enough. There's not enough. As our world is right now, we don't have enough to protect the children. What can be done? I'd love to hear your comments and opinions. And I know this is a hard subject, but certainly there's got to be more that we can do. And maybe if there was a red flag law, I think about, I remember we used to rent an apartment, and in the apartment complex would have a thing every 6 months where they come and they just look through the whole entire apartment and make sure nothing nefarious is going on, you know? And they did that every 6 months. And at least they were in the door. They could go and they could look in every room and they could see what was happening. And that was just something that you agreed to. What if there was a red flag law that just said there's been a complaint come in, and based on the red flag law, you have to allow us to come into your home and just look around and make sure and interview you? I don't know, maybe something as simple as that could help. Let me know your thoughts. We'll keep on talking and see what we can do. I'll be following along to see what happens with the Utah courts, if anything is changed, if any laws are changed, and I'll let you know. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this out, and I'll keep on going. I'll see you again soon. See ya.